using POAP, but we're not, just because there's it's a new to Web3 kind of event, and lots of people sign up with their emails, and we wanted to run the raffle on chain, and if it's just, the link isn't quite there, but I'll pass over to Jai.
Thank you. Good evening, nice to see everyone here. I work for POAP, it stands for Proof of Attendance Protocol, and you might have seen me walking around with this little NFC device and asking you to tap your phone. Why I was doing that is because this is a way to distribute tokens at events, and these tokens are a part of your identity on chain, so it proves that you attended this event tonight. And what we do at POAP is become a community engagement tool, so working with organisations and brands such as Crypto Mondays London. And for these organisations, what they can do is start to understand who's engaging, who's really contributing to the community. And by putting these assets on chain, there's lots of really interesting things you can do using the benefits of blockchain. I won't go through that later, but if you want to come and chat to me, please do. I'd love for as many people as possible to collect the POAP during the night, so please come and see me and ask me questions. And the reason you would want to collect it is because there might be some future incentives, perhaps, from Crypto Mondays for people who engage, as I mentioned, but more importantly, it becomes a part of your identity and putting that on chain. If you think about things today, a lot of your identity is owned by organisations like Facebook and Google, and that's centralised, and you don't really own your memories and who you are. So by collecting this, tonight's potentially part of your professional development and professional network, and it's proof on chain that you were here. So a little bit of a spill, and hope you have a good night.
I've been collecting POAPs for a while, but I only have like 20. But they're really cool because it's just nice to be able to look back in your history and see the events you attended, but also, as Jai said, like in the future, if Crypto Mondays wanted to give everyone some merch, and we could distribute it based off of the people that had like the mint tokens, which is quite fun. Is Testa here? Testa, amazing. Testa, round of applause for Testa. She's provided, and TechSpace has provided our venue, so thank you very much.
Hi, just a quick one. Welcome to TechSpace and welcome to our event space within TechSpace. We are a flexible office provider for tech-only companies. So if we take tech out of the company and it doesn't exist, we usually say no. We've sort of created a really, really cool sort of tech ecosystem. Members including people like WorldCoin, work within our spaces and stuff across London and Berlin. Just a quick one, we are about to launch our latest building in Goswell Road in Farringdon. So if any of you are interested in office space, speak to me. But also we are going to be doing a launch party, and we'd love to invite some of you as well. So I think we'll pop it in, maybe I'll send it over to the team as a follow-up email sort of thing. But do join us. It used to be a old gin distillery as well, so there will be gin. Hope to see you there, and thanks for coming by.
Thank you very much. All right then, so I will say less words and in a moment pass over to Renee, who is moderating our wonderful panel from data to DeFi. But there you go, there's my words. So Renee, please come to the stage. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me? Yep. Hi everyone. Everyone having a good night so far? Yes, awesome. So, welcome to today's panel discussion. We're going to be talking about oracles from data to DeFi, and we're here to kind of explore one of the most vital yet often misunderstood aspects of blockchain. So, can I just get a show of hands? I just want to get a gauge in the room. Put your hands up if you know quite a bit about oracles already. Okay, so...
It's pretty good numbers.
That's about maybe 20% of the room?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Hands up if you know nothing about oracles. A few, and hands up if you just have a very basic, limited knowledge of oracles. I'm going to put my hands up there too. So I'm here today as a student as well. I'm learning more about oracles. And I'm really excited to learn from our panel of experts here. We're going to dive into the role of oracles, their evolution, and and their future as well. So I just want to take a moment to do some introductions. So I'm Renee Francis. I'm the founder and director of Take3, and we're a Web3 marketing agency. I am from Australia. That's where my accent comes from. Who would? Another foreigners in the room. So we work with clients all over the world, and we help with branding and marketing, content, and community growth. And I'd like to take a moment to introduce Ben. So Ben is the Ecosystem Associate at Monan Labs. And as the Ecosystem Associate, Ben brings over a decade of experience in go-to-market strategy, business development and marketing, and ecosystem growth as well within technical environments. He's got a really solid foundation in blockchain, DeFi, infrastructure, and he spent 3.5 years previously at API3, where his efforts helped secure just a little bit, over $1.1 billion in total value, and onboarding over 25 DeFi protocols across the EVM system. So welcome, Ben.
Thank you. Just to clarify, that wasn't me personally through it.
But did you want to add anything?
No, yeah, I mean, I've just recently joined from API3, as you mentioned, to support the growth of Biohand ecosystem. And yeah, I think the chat tonight is going to be high level of oracles and how they start to interact with different protocols. And forward to kind of get to know you all.
Awesome, thanks Ben. And then we also have Dave over here. So Dave is the BD lead at API3. Dave is one of API's original members, focused on business development. He's been working in the Oracle space since 2018. So probably one of the most experienced people in the room currently when it comes to oracles. API3 is a DAO-governed Oracle project that provides decentralized pricing data. It's secured over $1 billion of value since the data feeds launched in 2023. dApps using API3 are able to recapture value that their users would otherwise have lost, basically providing more income and so did you want to add anything to that, Dave?
I think that covers it. This one?
It is.
Hello? Okay. Yeah, I think that covers it. Thanks, Renee.
Okay, perfect. So let's get into oracles. So as I mentioned, I'm definitely not an expert on oracles. These two guys are, so that's why we are all excited to hear from them. So from my simple understanding of oracles, I'm going to give my simple definition and then I'm going to ask you guys to build upon that and probably explain it a bit more deeply. So blockchain oracles are basically like bridges that connect blockchains to the outside world. So blockchains are secure and reliable, but they can't access real world information on their own. Like weather data, stock prices, or even the score of a football match, for example. So let's say, for example, a smart contract on a blockchain needs to pay someone based on the result of a football game. The blockchain can't go and check the score by itself. That's where an oracle steps in. And an oracle can go and get the score from a trusted source, send it to the blockchain, and then the smart contract can complete its task. So how did I do?
It's important to think of blockchain as a way of verifying that the transaction is the way that the program is working properly.
It's on and off, isn't it?
It's important to think of blockchain as a way of verifying that the actions of the program is built on the transaction.
Is it switch up all the way?
Hello? Okay, yeah, that's much better. So if you think of blockchains as the way of not needing a third party to verify that somebody has sent a transaction or a program has executed in a certain way, and nodes can come to a perfect consensus around that, there's not an easy way for a blockchain to achieve consensus based on each node polling external data, because the external data will differ depending on the time the nodes put it in. So you end up needing what's called an oracle to bring that external data on chain, as Renee said. The term oracle comes from Greek, where they were the humans that could speak to the gods, and we've co-opted that somewhat to blockchain. It's not related to the Oracle, the company at all. It could be less related to Oracle. So yeah, I think you've kind of covered everything there, but oracles are really important because the projects that are built using Oracle, and in Renee's example, expecting to know the result of a football match, end up being reliant on that Oracle. So you can build a perfectly decentralized contract that will execute in a programmatic way and tell you that Crystal Palace have again indeed lost their most recent football match, and therefore I have lost my money. But if the result is brought on chain and it's incorrect, then no matter how well executed the program is, no matter how bug-free its code, no matter how perfect the consensus of the blockchain, the end result will be wrong.
I think just to build on that, depending on the type of the data, it's really a question of how do you decentralize the input. So if it's a price reference feed, how do you make sure you're not relying on one single feed? If it's, say, an outcome of a football match, maybe play of the day, that's a subjective piece of information. So how do you make sure that's decentrally put on the blockchain? That's also part of the role of the Oracle.
So thank you for that. And are there different types of oracles that exist? Can you explain the difference between them?
So I would probably group oracles into two big buckets. And there are sub-buckets, but for the purpose of keeping things very simple, I would say there are subjective oracles and objective oracles. And a subjective oracle is one you can ask a very wide scope of question, like has Donald Trump created an NFT project? Which a subjective oracle is something like, or an objective oracle would be the opposite. So what is the price of Bitcoin? And while you could argue that the price of Bitcoin depends on where you're querying it, there's more or less going to be an acceptable answer to that, and a way to get that data easily, whereas other data that involves research or nuance might not necessarily be something you can look to find an easy source for. The examples of these Oracle projects for subjective oracles, you have projects like Kleros and UMA, and for objective oracles you have A3, but also people might be with Chainlink or Pith or some of those other guys.
And how do decentralized oracles differ from the centralized ones? And why would a project choose one or the other?
In the beginning of oracles, so back in 2018, 2017, when I started looking into oracles, if you wanted to build a contract on Ethereum and bring in external data, there was a company called Oracleize that would do that, and they would charge you for it. You were entirely trusting Oracleize to bring data on chain. And as a result, people didn't really build many smart contracts that relied on external data. So there were some, there were flight insurance apps that relied on centralized sources of information. There were a few more niche projects, but there wasn't really wide uptake of it, because I think people were maybe slightly wary of having this amazing blockchain that can execute everything centrally, but you're trusting a single company to provide that data. With decentralized oracles, you don't have a single source that can affect the results. So you spread the process of finding the information that can generate the correct outputs, and you do that in a way where it becomes incredibly difficult for a single party to affect the way that the application executes the program. So you don't really have the vulnerability of an oracle putting wrong data on chain and everything executing incorrectly, because you've built a consensus mechanism like the blockchain itself would have around how data is delivered.
Okay, and I just want to remind everyone we're going to do some Q&A at the end, so if you've got some questions, just get them ready, because these guys are going to be happy to answer them towards the end. So you were just explaining about the differences between the oracles, but can you expand on how do the oracles actually interact with the blockchains, and in particular smart contracts?
So throughout the rest of this panel, you might notice us referring to certain kinds of applications. I'll briefly outline a couple of them are. Some of the more common uses of oracles are applications like lending markets and prediction markets and perpetual swap dexes. Lending markets are markets where you can post up collateral on-chain and borrow different tokens against that. So you would put $100 of Bitcoin or wrap Bitcoin into a smart contract, and you'd be able to withdraw $80 in value of some other token. And in order for that to work, the oracle needs to be able to provide pricing data of the token you deposit and the token you withdraw. And for perpetual swap dexes, It's where you're longing or shorting a token, so you think it will go up in price or go down in price. And again, you need oracles to provide those pricing data. There are different ways that oracles do this. So some oracles, like API3, operate in a way where we make sure the data is available on-chain. So if you're using a lending market, you don't have to execute multiple transactions to get to refresh data. It's already refreshed, it's already up to date, and it's on-chain. Whereas other oracles will have the process of updating data be manually triggered so that you can get slightly more up-to-date data with a slight user experience cost. And for some application use cases, that trade-off is worth it. For others, it's less valuable. And we call this a push, where the data is on-chain all the time, versus pull, where you request the data to be updated.
Okay, thank you for that. So at the beginning, I asked the audience how many people know about Oracle. 1% people put their hands up. So let's just do a quick check-in now. How many people feel like they know more about Oracles? Hands up. Okay, so we've got a lot more people. That's awesome. So Ben, I'm going to bring you to this now. So, working at Monad, a layer 1 blockchain, obviously you guys would make use of these oracles. So can you share some examples of how these oracles are being used in DeFi projects?
Yeah, for sure. So building on what Dave kind of just mentioned, really, perpetual markets, on-chain trading, it's been a huge found product market fit within various different networks, obviously within users. Really, that is where pull oracles will come into play. Likewise, lending markets are going to be fundamental. I think beyond this, there is a lot of emerging categories, let's say social fi will require price fees to kind of perform financial transactions within social applications. I think sports betting is potentially quite interesting. You start to then think about how do you create odds and serve that odds as an oracle, and think about how do you decentralize that as well. That's it's quite a complex problem to try and solve. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to say that Algo stable coins may come back. I've seen some interesting designs proposed around LRTs and rebalancing LRTs as a kind of asset to kind of back a stable coin. But historically, Oracle use cases in Algo stable coins haven't really gone that well. So don't think oracles will make a rise in that space within Monad. Yeah, I mean, the lending and perps markets will be core to that kind of DeFi staple, let's say.
And earlier we were talking about poly market and how oracles have been used for the US election. Can you expand on that a little bit for everyone here?
Yeah, sure. So going back to the subjective data point, the prediction market use case has been quite well noted. Poly market, they've been tracking the US election odds, and it's been referenced quite a bit in various different articles in the US and around the world. That is an oracle at the end of the day. It's the kind of odds that is being brought to the blockchain. I think it's been stated before that it's a good use case of a decentralized network. And really, I think as you see more data points being provided by the kind of subjective oracles, see these new markets start to emerge. And Monad's very interested to facilitate these kind of categories within that. I think kind of as a build on the first part of the question, the founding team that said Monad has a background in high frequency trading. The scalability of a network increasing means that might be possible on chain. And when you think about how does the oracle interact with that high frequency trading activity, you'd have to just supercharge what you see at the moment from a pull or push perspective. So yeah, again, I think looking and working with people like API3 and other oracle providers around how do you start to push the performance of the oracles as well is going to be equally as important to realize new applications on the flip side of that.
Thanks, Ben. I just wanted to add a bit more on that and kind of color us to how oracles operate, because it would seem intuitive that you want the data to be as new and as fresh as possible, because stale data is something people don't like. So why isn't it? There are always trade-offs with oracles. If you wanted to have data pushed every block, the Oracle project would have to pay to update the Oracle every block, and that ends up costing an unfeasibly large amount of money. So most push oracles, most conventional oracles, will have a trade-off where they update based on a set percentage deviation, which means that if Bitcoin is 100K in real life and 100K on chain, you would only see it update on chain when it goes either above or below that by a set percentage. Conventionally, it's around 0.5% on mainnet Ethereum. It goes lower on chain to top prices. So there's like a liveliness trade-off, but the benefit is that the Oracle project doesn't go bust within 2 months. With pull oracles, when the data is triggered manually, you decentralize the triggering of those updates. So it becomes a way of not necessarily needing to keep it up to date. But the trade-off with those is that a lot of the big DeFi primitives, so your Aves, your compound V2s, your GNT1s, they've held millions and billions of dollars of value for a long time. So you can be pretty sure, touch wood, that nothing bad is going to happen if you have funds in them, again, touch wood. Therefore, people don't like to see changes to them, having to adapt them to a new type of oracle to save potentially some gas for the oracle operator isn't something that people are really willing to do, and a lot of the people putting liquidity in those protocols don't want to. So it's this kind of continual trade-off between gas pricing and oracle design versus designing new projects to take advantage of oracles that price in slightly different ways. I hope that helps people understand this.
Perfect. Bitcoin at 100K.
And it's specified currency.
True, but we're all excited to see those days, aren't we? Okay, so are there any app builders in the room? Anyone building apps?
I wanted to ask that as well. Nice.
Yeah, a couple of people building apps. So for app builders, when considering oracles, what considerations should they be thinking about?
Yeah, good question. I think it's fair to say within most Oracle designs, there are certain points of centralization. So there's things from a trust perspective that you have to consider within each individual design. I don't think it should be, I should go into each individual Oracle and kind of highlight those, but there may be things like bridges serving across data to where you consume the price from. And it's not that it's not, that is a reality of a lot of systems that are being built, but there are definitely things to consider around that. There may be the reality that the company behind the Oracle is not being decentralized, so perhaps they can control the Oracle if they needed to or wanted to, let's say. And I think when you're deciding which Oracle to choose for your application, that is definitely the first thing that comes to mind. I think the second is that the user experience of the app really can depend on the Oracle and the mechanism that you're choosing to utilize in your app. So going back to what Dave was mentioning around the two different push and pull designs, some are optimized for perhaps perps and some are optimized for lending markets. Choosing which one is right for your app and understanding the trade-offs of which mechanism is the most appropriate would be the second thing to mind. Yes.
I think maybe elaborating why some oracles are better for perps than others. So with perpetual decks, if you think, well, I think Bitcoin will be 100K, maybe will one day, you then decide to go long on that because Bitcoin isn't 100K yet, I assume. And you would then normally take out leverage, so you'd be up to maybe 100 times long. And you really care about the fresh price if you're 100 times long on something. You really want it to be accurate to the sense that a slight deviation around that's intolerable. So you're willing to pay the gas to update that because it's worth it for you, so that you know exactly the cost you're entering out. Whereas for the lending market, you probably aren't penny or cent sensitive, and you'd probably rather save the gas fees when you're depositing or borrowing. And those are kind of two very simplified examples of why Oracle design can matter, and this is why if you're looking at GLX-V2, it's built expecting pull oracles, whereas Aave still use push.
And before this, we were also talking about how the Oracle category has evolved over EVM and other ecosystems. So how have application builders started to utilize these different infrastructure
Yeah, I think sports betting, I mentioned this earlier, that again comes to mind. There's one project that I'm thinking of that has introduced the possibility of trading your, let's say, football team or trading your hockey team in the US on leverage. So if you think your team's going to rank through the table, you can put a 5x long on that position. And that's a blend of a smart leverage engine and also then using an oracle to provide those odds. And that's something that when you come back to how does crypto have long-term value, it has to add something to the experience for consumers. And for me, that is something that we're seeing the infrastructure that's been built start to be applied to applications that might see people using it en masse or have breakouts, let's say. I think real-world asset oracles, compliance oracles, so Chronicle, they are MakerDAO's oracle. They also help them with their real-world asset purchases for T-bills. And from an oracle perspective, it's very simple to confirm that perhaps they bought $1 million worth of T-bills. What they then had to do was figure out how do they comply with all the regulatory aspects to do with that purchase. How do they stack that on chain? So almost the oracle was the simple part, but then it became like a legal kind of challenge for them to solve. They've now gone on to support different projects utilizing that real-world asset oracle. I think, where you see opportunities, maybe things like commercial property funds on chain, you have a kind of shared pool of people who can buy a certain derivative of the fund, and that's how the liquidity is formed for that venture, let's say. So yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. Dave, do you have anything you want to?
Okay, so when we were talking before this, there was mention that it's still roughly like 95% of the applications or Oracle applications are still in DeFi for now. So how can that be expanded more?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, DeFi has a terrible habit of anything that's new gets tested by every hacker on the planet. So that's the starting point that people have to go through when they are releasing a new DeFi protocol. High frequency trading stands out for me. I think that's just something that's very close to monads. Lending markets, I kind of dived into this over the weekend actually. They're starting to see risk oracles be introduced. I think you may start to see personalized yield be offered to people depending on maybe their wallet behavior, maybe the infrastructure risks to do with that specific market, or perhaps even there's an oracle by Chaos Labs which has kind of a computation element that looks at a whole range of parameters into something alongside the price feed. And what that might mean is if you're, different pools may have slightly different yields as you choose to provide liquidity there based upon this risk component of the oracle. So perhaps that is something that is not so far off for DeFi.
Yeah, just to add to that, actually what Ben's mentioned is already kind of live in various use cases. So Euler V2 has a stablecoin pool which is actively risk managed between different stablecoins, so that you can deposit various stablecoins, borrow other stablecoins, and they manage a basket of them as collateral. So you see risk managers, while they're not, even if they're not actively providing an oracle that offers the risk data to other lending markets, they're out there looking at ways that they can provide the services to people participating in DeFi, and certainly then providing that data in a, it's not really decentralized because you want to know who's managing your risk. I would argue that's a good use case for centralized oracle. You want somebody who's really good at managing risk, and you want to know that they're managing your risk. You want to know the risk is being managed by somebody. You want a brand name probably for that. So yeah, maybe that's a good use case for a centralized oracle, and I can certainly see them moving in that direction.
So whenever we talk about data, generally, it's always really important to know how we're keeping data accurate, how we're ensuring data is not being manipulated, especially in the Web3 space, and especially because DeFi relies heavily on oracles for price feeds, we've been talking about. So Can you talk about some of those challenges around data accuracy and preventing manipulation in this space?
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on earlier, if you decentralize oracles, you reduce the risk surface because you don't have single parties that can easily affect the end result that ends up on chain. What we try and do at API 3 is make it so that the data sourcing is as transparent as what happens once it's on the blockchain itself. So we have data providers that run our Oracle, we can prove that they run our Oracle through our marketplace that we run. So you can see exactly where the data is sourced from, it's all aggregated transparently on chain, and then it's consumed by DeFi projects. You're not trusting that third-party nodes you may never have heard of have relayed it successfully to chain, and you know that there are real companies behind each data point. So it's very unlikely there will be any collusion because there are real-world entities, there are directors, there would be repercussions were they to try it, and if they did try it, it would be forever marked in what was submitted to chain that they had started to try it. So you make it as transparent as possible. And then on top of that, we are DAO, so the data management will be decentralized in a way that means if these providers start to do anything strange, they can be taken off the legal placements. So I think managing the risk associated with putting data on chain is pretty multifaceted, but in trying to make everything as transparent as the transactions that happen on chain itself, you can hopefully outsource the detection of these attacks as much as possible and make it as expensive as possible in the real world. We try to attempt that. Because certainly for things like Arwave or Compound, there are billions of dollars at stake. So it becomes very, very beneficial for people to want to affect the data that goes into those models.
So looking ahead a little bit now, what do you guys see as the future of blockchain oracles, let's say the next 5 to 10 years? And how do you see their role evolving in centralized ecosystems?
I'm going to just shade that pretty quickly. So the way I see the role of oracles evolving is similar to how Robinhood changed people trading stocks. So you used to have to pay a broker a fee whenever you bought a stock, whenever you sold a stock. What Robinhood did was they realized that somebody wants to buy a stock, somebody wants to sell a stock. That data is valuable. They sell the data that somebody wants to buy the stock to people who then are willing to pay the fee for them to trade in exchange for having the data for them wanting to buy or sell. Robinhood do this in a pretty negative way because people who then make these trades and execute them take some money off the users very slightly by affecting the price of the stock in their direction. At API 3, what we do is, in effect, provide a fast lane. If people want to trigger an extra Oracle update that wouldn't normally happen, they're able to bid for the right to do this. And we then give 90% of what they bid back to the application that benefits from the extra update. So if you're an application using us, you can make money from people who are bidding for extra Oracle updates. And we also get the advantages of being a push Oracle, but with the ability to have as many updates as a pull Oracle, if it benefits somebody. And this is, Robinhood's a decent relatable example for it, but in real terms for an Arwave-sized app, that could be $100 million since they were founded. So it's a significant value that can be left on the table by not benefiting from that type of extra update. So I think in the future, people will realize that a lot of oracles have been providing their services for free and willingly paying the gas, but there are ways that even just using free Oracle data is leaving money on the table. So there will be newer ways of monetizing data to the benefit of the people using the application itself, rather than detrimentally against them.
Not sure what else to add. I mean, at the end of the day, we need to be building more apps in the industry. There's a lot of infrastructure now available. There's a lot of funding. There's a lot of support, I think, from various different entities. So we need to be building and realizing applications that have utility, right? So I think from an Oracle perspective, 5 to 10 years, I think outside of DeFi, there will probably be new use cases for oracles. I think computation off-chain will probably be accepted, as Dave mentioned earlier. It is a point of centralization, but it's acceptable in some cases. So I think that off-chain computation being served as an oracle, we're already seeing it, and I think that'll probably only grow more and more prominent. And yeah, I think I don't know if it's DeFi in general and Oracle's interaction with it, but as Dave mentioned, I think these markets, mainly around NEV and the way liquidity moves on chain, will probably grow in size as it's grown over the last couple of years. So that trend likely won't stop. And I think there'll be more sophisticated actors coming in to look at liquidation processes, swap MEV, and Oracles will probably play a role in that as well, as there already are with a few people, including API3. So yeah, but I mean, the TLDR is, I think, 3 to 5 years we have to be experimenting more. I think there has to be more VC money flowing to the consumer side and the application side. And yeah, I think Oracles they're in a pretty good position as now a healthy category. There's a good number of providers, let's say. They all have slightly different takes from an architectural perspective. They're all slightly different on the way that they deliver the Oracle. And I imagine they'll all find their own kind of use cases or niche in the market and start to own that segment a bit more. So yeah.
Just quickly, Ben, if there were anybody looking to build an early stage DeFi project on Nomad, would there be anybody they should be speaking to?
Yeah, of course. No, I mean, the Monad team Monad Labs has got a range of different initiatives to support application builders, whether that's acceleration programs, just kind of initial pitch competitions with funding associated to it. There's a whole host of activities as well as a kind of quickly growing global team. So yeah, if anybody is curious, feel free to message me or kind of catch me after here. And if anyone's just generally curious about Oracles and DeFi, feel free to contact me on LinkedIn as well. Happy to have a conversation.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move to some audience questions now. So I hope you have some burning questions ready to go. But before we do that, can we just thank these awesome guys for sharing all their knowledge with us? Okay, questions? Not all at once. Okay, great.
Hi there. You talked a bit about objective and subjective use cases for the whole ecosystem. Can you describe some examples where API3 provides the value add for those two scenarios, just to learn a bit about how that works?
So we don't provide subjective data. We source our data from a variety of data providers. It's generally pricing data, be it crypto, forex, TradFi, and it's not something that our Oracle project is set up to provide. But to give you an example of a use case we have planned in future with a subjective provider, one of the products we're looking at doing in future is based on ensuring the data feeds we provide. And if the data feeds misreport, which they never have, never will, touch wood, then we would cover some of the costs that the projects incur as a result of it. And the question, has the data feed misreported, is an incredibly subjective question, because it relies on what's the wrong price? Is the price out by $1? Is that within what would be acceptable market variation? And it's something that would require a lot of assessments of what was the actual value posted on chain, what was the prevailing market price, what data providers were used, were the data providers providing the right price, was it the infrastructure that caused the report? So there's a lot to it. I think that's a subjective data type that maybe is quite esoteric. Yeah, things like sports data are easy ones. But that's an example of how I think using subjective data, but it's not something we can provide.
So sorry, just to lead on from that. So subjective data is fairly immature compared to the objective use case where you've got Chainlink, PIT, all these other kind of providers of data, stock prices, financial data, etc., etc.
Yeah, essentially it is. You have very few subjective Oracle providers. I really like Kleros. I like the Kleros team. Uma provides subjective data as well. Aside from prediction markets, there aren't that many use cases. Kleros do some pretty cool escrow services where you send someone some crypto, and then if they say they haven't received it, then you have a subjective Oracle decide if you received the crypto or not. So there are some use cases like that, but there aren't as many use cases out there. And I think really DeFi has what's given subjective Oracles product market fit. you could arguably have object levels. You could arguably have a subjective oracle to size DeFi, but it would be really slow. So you want to open a position on a lending market, you don't want to a collaborative bunch of people to individually say what they thought Bitcoin was at that time, because it takes a much longer time to actually return the value than subjective data.
Sure, thank you.
You're welcome.
More questions?
Both Chainlink and PIF collect data differently, with PIF collecting it from independent sources, institutional sources, and Chainlink collecting it from an aggregate of independent sources. Which do you believe is the most reliable, and which method do you believe is more likely to be adopted?
We believe in collecting it from professional sources, similar to PIF, and we also have them run our Oracle, similar to PIF. So I would say you have inherent inefficiency. So Chainlink's model is you have people running Chainlink nodes. The Chainlink nodes then query the same type of sources that we have on our Oracle directly. So if you look at those kind of designs, one of them has an extra party. From a security point of view, an extra party in the middle is an extra party that could potentially misreport. So if you somehow control over 50% of the Chainlink nodes that were querying third-party data sources, you could put a fake result on chain. Also, the data sources could try and collude. With the PIF or API3 approach, only the data sources act as a potential vector, and then they're identified. They tend to be very long-standing companies with a history in the space. So you can argue the Chainlink approach has an extra party that could potentially misreport.
I would also kind of counter-question that with what is your use case, because going back to push versus pull, which we referenced, PIF, both traditional Chainlink and PIF feeds, one is push, one is pull, and again, it comes down to slight nuances in your application and where you're trying to consume that data, because it changes a little bit of the delivery method and some extra layers of trust, let's say, or areas of trust that you need.
So just to add another Australian voice to the mix, Dave, you're saying that because you've got a collection of known entities, they wouldn't ever collude. Now, in TradFi markets, we've seen lots of instances of that. So the question is, has there been any sort of thinking around the way that the people who lose out of that collusion could be compensated using some on-chain techniques?
Not directly. We prefer to focus on, other than the insurance side, prefer to focus on making the collusion as likely as possible. And so I think quite often people assume that because Chainlink have third-party nodes that query these sources, that the sources can't then collude anyway. They still can. The source collusion is always a risk if you have a number of these kind of institutional sources or any sources. They can still be. So I would say, assuming that the third-party nodes stop that happening is not necessarily the case. You just have an extra vector. And if they're posting data directly to chain, the collusion will be visible and will remain on chain for perpetuity. I think ultimately it depends. We have people who monitor these to make sure that there are no outliers. There will be in the future, DAO members will take on that role themselves as well to make sure if you see a source that's outside the median of the others, or if there's significant differences in what one source is posting, they can be swapped out with another source.
I was thinking more in terms of sort of having the oracles have something at stake.
In terms of having the oracles have something at stake, a lot of the problem here is how can you secure the billions and billions in DeFi without having significantly more than billions yourself? And Oracle projects tend not to have those kind of funds around. You could argue that an Oracle project's future reputation is at stake with all of these. Whenever an Oracle misreports, people tend to look for alternatives to them being used. API3's insurance fund is one way of doing this, and the collateral for the insurance is the people who are the people who vote in API3. You put up your API3 tokens and stake them, that gives you voting rights. So in effect, the people who are deciding how API3 is governed are the people who collateralize any mistakes that are made. But obviously, in terms of the magnitude that could be at stake, it becomes very difficult to say we could cover billions and billions and billions. But in terms of motivation for everything to be built the correct way, it certainly provides that, because otherwise we would personally lose out once the insurances are compensated.
Actually, a follow-up question for me on this. Do you think that risk-taking platforms like Eigenlayer could play a big role in helping to add this economic value to change a bit the security model?
Potentially, but how do Eigenlayer risk-takers know what oracles they should be staking at? And how do you know that an oracle that has attracted the most restaking dollars is actually the one that's most trustworthy? Because the oracle isn't playing with its own funds, it's playing with other people's funds. So they could just be offering the best yield to people who restake and back their fees. They might not be the most secure, they might just have the most value behind it. So in a way, I don't feel like that gives the same security guarantees, because they may not personally, or as a project, be asked on for it. Although again, you could argue future reputation would mean that people would then not restake on their oracle.
Thanks.
Hi, thank you for a really interesting evening. I think we're going to look back on this as an important event. Question, just to check I've understood the use cases. So I can see sporting events, like who won a football game or who wins the US election. I can see price of something, so what will the price of Bitcoin be on a certain date? What other use cases are there?
What are the use cases? So sports betting, I mean, the Risk Oracle is a very, he's kind of new to the market. You've got Gauntlet, Chaos Labs, and then the founder of Sonic Phantom, Andre Condra, probably not pronounced that quite correctly, but has just introduced a credit score oracle that's native to the blockchain. So I think risk management is probably very, it's a use case already. Within decentralized oracles, I think there's a difference between people consuming data through an API and then relying on an oracle to centralize the data. And you can see within sports betting there's a monetary outcome, the flip side, right? And it's a question of, do you trust that data? Is that from a decentralized source, or is that, is it going to be appropriate for a blockchain to consume? So I mean, sports betting is quite obvious. Risk oracles, I guess there's probably, I've spoken to people around housing, purchasing houses, and oracles to do with purchasing commercial property or property recently. I think that's arguably an oracle use case. Just a bit.
Yeah, I have an anecdote, but it relates to an oracle use case, so it's slightly relevant. There is a type of oracle use case called parametric insurance. Parametric insurance is where you can put up some collateral, and then if the use case, or if the thing that triggers the insurance to pay out happens, then you get your expected payout programmatically from the insurer, which sounds great. But actually back in 2017, AXA launched a product called Fizzy, which is decentralized flight insurance. And I think they would cover flights between London and New York and London and Paris. And you paid, if I remember time, was a couple of £100 equivalent in Ethereum. And if the flight was delayed by more than 2 hours, you got the cost of your flight back. And it worked so well that they canned the product, because the claims happened so easily that they lost money on it. And the risk assessors hadn't bothered factoring in that actually trusters claims being paid out meant they lost money, because the odds tables they had were based on people not being able to claim successfully. So I think parametric insurance is a nice use case. I'd like to see that happening. I think easy payouts work well, but then again, for the insurers, they would normally do other things with the money rather than just hold it in a contract expecting to pay you out at some point in the future. So it's a nice thought experiment, but maybe not one that's ready for the real world.
Yeah, just thinking of something on a subjective side that I've been kind of working or helping out with recently. It's to do with DeFi, which is decentralized science. A little bit of a, say, left field sector that you might not think is coming chain, but basically kind of helping how do you input research and then kind of use the blockchain to source provenance or provide provenance of that. And really, if you think about research, again, it's very subjective. How do you moderate that? How do you make sure that the input is accurate and timely and then updated regularly as well. But ultimately, when you're stamping that into a contract or stamping that into something on chain, that is an oracle. You're stamping that various different pieces of information into whatever the application is. And they were thinking about using it for things like gaming outcomes. So you can have researchers inputting what's happening on a certain day, and then that is a purely random outcome when it comes to the game experience. You know, that's probably not the ultimate goal of DeFi, but you know, that was kind of where they were trying to take that subjective oracle.
Okay, I've got a question for you guys. As you mentioned, it's quite expensive to get the data on chain. So I guess, what do you think? How should we make Oracle use more accessible for everyone, especially for custom data?
I think one of the things that can help make oracles, like reduce oracles running costs, is what I alluded to earlier with API 3 having the ability for people to really trigger extra updates. An example of this is, say you saw a potential liquidation that you could trigger on a decentralized lending market, and you would make 5% of that user's position, but the oracle would need to be updated first in order for that to happen. You would then pay for that update. So you kind of decentralize some of the costs of updating it. And then the dApp gets back 90% of what that person has paid in order for the right to trigger liquidation. So although you're not making the oracle itself, you're not making the updates cheaper, but you're making most of them happen not by the oracle project, and you're making the dApp that uses the oracle have an extra source of income, then maybe they'd be more able to help contribute to the costs of these networks. I think obviously something that's really helped has been the prevalence of L2s these days. DeFi on mainnet Ethereum is a fortune. We don't supply, I think, any price fees to mainnet Ethereum. Sorry, this microphone isn't working that well, but I guess we should roll with it. Yeah, so it's fine. We don't supply any fees to mainnet Ethereum. If anybody here is wondering what the costs to maintain an oracle are on any of the main networks and L2s, market.api3.org provides estimates of the price it costs to maintain for 3 months for all of our data feeds. And it's orders and orders of magnitude between some things. So whenever we first started up, I could get you down that rabbit hole, it's pretty boring. But effectively, I think L2s help, all tail ones help by having it much cheaper. Mainnet Ethereum, some of the kind of more complex designs around order flow updates can help reduce costs for users.
I think we have time for one, maybe 2 more questions. One question there.
Can you explain a little more about where attestations sit in the realm of data off-chain and bring it on-chain compared to oracles?
So Ethereum attestation service, right? Yeah, good question. Yeah, Ethereum is an oracle. I think if you wanted to use it to stamp some information on chain, it kind of achieves the same job. You know, there's many things like Web3 functions from Gelato, and there's different ways to get this data. I think going back to the purpose of the oracle, centralizing the input, what you're doing with the ES is saying that I've just typed in this piece of information, or this is some data I produced, and I'm putting this onto the application or the network. You're then trusting whoever's inputted that, right? Which is fine in probably 90% of the use cases. But if you were, let's say, if you were this gentleman's, inheritance application, the question becomes, who are you trusting when that person is saying this payout needs to go to this person, right? And it just really comes down to the trust question. And the oracle's job is to try and mitigate that trust as much as possible, particularly in DeFi.
Oh, I think I will pass the word back to Ru.
Awesome. All right, well, round of applause for Dave, Ben, and Renee. Thank you very much.
You're welcome to come. Oh, you want to take a photo?
Oh, yeah.
No, you go for it, you go for it. Well, as you do that, so, yeah, we were going to do a POAP raffle, but the raffle is now going to be using this bag, and everyone should have a little ticket Now, if you don't have a ticket, you might have 20 seconds to get one. Does anyone want a ticket? Okay, you got one. Oh, no, you don't have to put it in here. I've got the thing. So what this is for is 4 pairs of tickets to Zebu Live, which is London's largest Web3 event. We have some of the Zebu Live team here as well. Round of applause for Natasha, and I'm sorry I quit on it. So, did you want to say anything, or should we do the raffle? Yeah, amazing. Round of applause all.
Thanks so much, Ru. Hi, everybody. I'm new to the team, so maybe a lot of you all know Zebu already, know Harry, Jolly, Luke, but I've joined the team and I'm leading the events. It's on October 10 and 11 at Woolwich. We're looking forward to inviting everybody in the Web3 industry to come attend the event. We're partnered with Crypto Mondays. They're doing their Monday event with us as part of London Web3 Week. We've got a lot of great speakers coming, sponsored. We've got Coinbase, Solana, Alchemy, Goliath Ventures coming from the US. That's a new one. So lots of networking opportunities. And yeah, some of our speakers are Robbie Young. We've got Dr. Lisa Cameron coming, and a few others that, of course, I can't remember at the moment because I'm still nervous. So yeah, we'd love to have everybody attend and raffling the tickets. And we have one more thing that's happening. It's called the Gems Den. It's a startup pitch contest. So it'll be great if anyone is looking to pitch their product. We've got our details on the website. You can come, be a judge, be a partner, be a sponsor, and be a startup who wants to talk about their product as well. So yeah, thank you so much. See you, everybody.
Four pairs.
Okay, we'll go. Let's see who's the first. Number 100. Ooh, number 100. Lovely. You take your names.
Yeah, you got one half, I got the other half.
One more. We've got 100. We've got 136. 136. No? Anybody? Okay, perfect. And got 2 now. We've got 109 and 114. So we've got 114, 109. Lovely. Yeah, last one, right? 4.
You've done 4, I think.
Yeah, 5.
You can do 2 more if you want. It's up to you.
No, we want people to attend. Oh God, I got 3 in my hand. Sorry, someone got dumped back. Number 95 and 101.
Okay, that was 6 now.
Oh, it's fine. I'm feeling generous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Awesome. Okay. So I just should say thank you to our sponsors, TechSpace, Economy, Kudos, Volkswagen, the Digital Commonwealth, J City, Somoto, Voice of Crypto, Shine, and Queen Rule. And if anyone knows anyone at Duracell or our mics, we will take a Duracell sponsorship as well. There is food. We've got Subway sandwiches until 9:30. You're welcome to stay here. If anyone wants to go to the pub afterwards, there's a pub around the corner called the Griffin. But aside from that, just one more round of applause for everyone here. And for Crypto Mondays for putting the event together. Oh yeah, there's a Crypto Mondays slide to thank everyone, and we actually had a survey.